The hum of Professor Zix-9's classroom was a mix of eager anticipation and mild confusion, the usual atmosphere for the xenoanthropology course at the Galactic Academy. As he shuffled across the polished obsidian floor, his 8 eye stalks scanning the room, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that today's lesson was going to take an unexpected turn. He had seen it coming. The odd requests for more information, the subtle murmurs among the students, the strange fascination with humanity. And now, it was time to reveal the truth. "Class," Professor Zix-9 began, his voice laced with the usual gravitas reserved for such delicate matters. "Today, we will discuss the real reason humans were banned from galactic warfare." His many appendages waved dramatically, signaling to the students that this was not going to be an ordinary lecture. The room fell into a stunned silence. Even the gelatinous blob student in the back seemed to freeze mid-squish. A blue, squishy student in the corner, who had a tendency to ask the wrong questions at the wrong time, raised an appendage. "Professor?" The blob gurgled, its voice wobbling. "I thought humans were banned because they're primitive and weak? What's the real reason?" Zix-9's eye stalks twitched, a nervous shift, a soft exhale, as though the truth had just gotten significantly heavier. He let out a slow sigh, the kind that indicated either regret or revelation. "Well, dear students," he began, "it's not quite that simple. You see, it all began with the Great Zorian War of 3576. The room leaned forward in anticipation, or at least those with the ability to lean did. The rest squished, reared, and swiveled, all in unison. Zix-9 could feel the tension building. It was time to tell them. The Zorblons, thinking themselves incredibly clever, decided to recruit humans as allies. Not warriors, mind you, but as cannon fodder, he said, letting the words hang in the air. The students exchanged nervous glances. Most species, as they soon learned, had a rather practical view of war. Kill or be killed. But humans, they were a different breed. A bubbly student, Blowback, whose natural form resembled a floating balloon, oozed forward eagerly. "Did the humans get vaporized instantly?" Blowback asked, a hopeful edge in its voice. Zix-9 chuckled, a dry rattling sound that echoed in the room. "Oh, if only it had been that simple." He paused for dramatic effect. "What happened next, dear students, was, well, let's just say it redefined the concept of overkill." The class gasped collectively, their various forms of shock manifesting as flaring antennae, rapid blinking, and color-shifting skin. "You see," Zix-9 continued, "humans have this quaint little idea called war crimes." The students exchanged puzzled glances, unsure what this meant. "Most species simply fight until one side is dead or they surrender. But humans, they made a list of things that are too mean to do in war." Kiki, a bird-like creature perched on her desk, tilted her head, feathers rustling in confusion. "That sounds noble," she chirped. Zix-9 barked a laugh, his voice high-pitched with incredulity. "Oh, sweet hatchling, you're missing the point. They made a list, all right. And then, they did everything not on that list." A collective gasp rippled through the classroom, causing a minor gravitational disturbance. Even Blowback oozed nervously, its gelatinous form quivering. The professor leaned in, his voice lowering to a near whisper. "The Zorblons thought they were bringing in primitive allies, but instead, they got a species that not only fought a war, but redefined the very essence of combat. They didn't just use our weapons, they took them apart and turned them into weapons." Blowback's voice, an excited bubble of air, burst forth. "Wait, what? They weaponized black holes?" Zix-9 let out a long, drawn-out sigh, his eye stalks drooping in both exhaustion and disbelief. Yes, they did. And that, dear students, is the human way. Impossible, you say? To them, Impossible is more of a dare than a limitation. The room fell silent as the implications sunk in. Even the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had no concept of what humans were capable of. Kiki, ever the inquisitive one, asked, "But how did they weaponize black holes?" Zix-9 looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and awe. "They call it thinking outside the box. We call it breaking the laws of physics and decency." The class sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what they had just learned. They had known that humans were a powerful species, but nothing had prepared them for this. Professor Zix-9 shook his head slowly. The Zorblons thought they were using humans as mere cannon fodder, but the humans were already 3 steps ahead. They turned the entire war into a science project. He looked at each student, his voice now deadly serious. "You think your civilizations are advanced? Your weapons, your technology, your tactics? Humans will take them, break them, and make them something you can't even begin to imagine." The room fell into an unsettling quiet. Zix-9's final words echoed in the stillness, a chilling reminder of humanity's true potential. Never underestimate them, for if you do, they will turn your galaxy into their playground, and all you will be left with is the debris of what once was. And with that, Professor Zix-9, the most seasoned academic of galactic warfare, realized he had just shared the one secret every species in the galaxy wished they'd never known. Humanity was a force that could never truly be contained. The tension in the lecture hall hung thick, an uneasy hum vibrating through the walls. Professor Zix-9, despite his best attempts to compose himself, couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the universe was about to be irrevocably altered. Humans, with their unpredictable chaos and boundless ingenuity, were a force of nature, and despite the warnings, the galaxy had already underestimated them. The students sat in a stunned silence, processing the professor's last statement. Even Blowback, who had been bubbling excitedly throughout the lecture, had gone still, its gelatinous form now rippling with uncertainty. No one spoke. The weight of the information was too much. Finally, it was Kiki, the bird-like creature perched near the front, who broke the silence. "But, Professor," she chirped, feathers rustling, "if humans are so terrifying, why did they agree to stay on their planet? Why not conquer the galaxy? Why not use their abilities to dominate?" Zix-9's eye stalks twitched nervously, his appendages ringing together. The truth of it, the truth that had haunted him for years, was not something he could easily say out loud, yet Kiki had already asked the question that had been plaguing him. The real reason humanity had stayed out of galactic affairs had far less to do with their strength and more to do with their preferences. "They stayed because they chose to," Zix-9 said quietly, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and trepidation. "It wasn't because they were weak, it was because they didn't care enough to want the galaxy. At least, not in the way we do. They were comfortable, content. They agreed to stay on their homeworld mostly for their own reasons. No galactic conquest, no pursuit of power. And that," he added, "is what scared us the most." The room was silent once more, the gravity of Zix-9's words sinking in. Humanity hadn't stayed out of the galactic stage because they couldn't rise to the challenge. It was because they simply didn't see the need. They were happy to be left alone, living their small, chaotic lives, mastering their own world. Yet, even with that, they had left a mark so profound that the galactic councils had no choice but to keep them out of interstellar warfare altogether. For all their brilliance, humans didn't see the galaxy as their playground. Instead, it was just a larger version of the chaotic world they already inhabited, a world where they had already done the impossible. Zix-9 paused, feeling his tentacles tremble slightly. "We feared that one day humans would decide to leave their planet, that they would get bored, tired of their Netflix and endless social media distractions, and look beyond their world to the stars. And if they did, they would change the galaxy forever. The words hung in the air like an impending storm, but before the students could digest them, a chime echoed from the professor's desk. His heart skipped a beat, his sensory organs flaring as he turned to face the screen. The last thing he expected was for humanity to reach out to him directly. A human face appeared on the screen, grinning from ear to ear. It was a familiar face, the one that haunted his dreams. "Hey, Professor!" "Long time no see." Zix-9's eye stalks twisted in alarm. "Captain Rodriguez?" he stammered, his voice tight. What is it you want now?" Rodriguez's grin widened, stretching impossibly wide. Just checking in on my favorite xenoanthropology professor. Keeping an eye on your students, huh? Making sure they don't get any funny ideas about messing with humanity?" Zix-9's tentacles clenched. "Funny ideas?" he repeated. "Captain, I thought I made it clear. Humans are strictly forbidden from entering galactic warfare. The consequences—" "Oh, come on, Prof," Rodriguez interrupted, his voice smooth but carrying that unmistakable edge of humor. "It's not like we're going to start a war. We've been trying to behave." The captain's smile turned into a smirk. "Though I can't promise we'll stay too well-behaved forever." Zix-9 blinked, his eye stalks shifting in confusion. "What is it you want from me now, Rodriguez? Are you planning to break the treaty? I should remind you—" Rodriguez cut him off again, leaning in toward the screen as if he were sharing a well-kept secret. "Well, actually, I was thinking of sending a little delegation to the next Galactic Council meeting. Just a friendly visit. Show everyone that humans aren't as dangerous as they think." The professor's heart skipped a beat, his tentacles nearly locking in place. He stared at the screen, trying to suppress the growing dread building within him. A delegation? "You're going to the council?" Zix-9 asked, his voice barely a whisper. Rodriguez shrugged nonchalantly. "Sure, why not? It's been a while since we showed up. Time to shake things up a bit." He gave the screen a wink. "Don't worry, Professor, we'll be on our best behavior. Scout's honor." Zix-9 froze, his multiple hearts pounding in his chest. He couldn't help but remember his first encounter with Rodriguez, a man who could barely be contained within his own skin, a human who had faced down an entire galaxy of superior species, and somehow managed to make everyone else feel irrelevant. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Zix-9 staring at the blank screen. His tentacles were frozen in place. The worst part wasn't that humans were coming to the Galactic Council, it was that they weren't coming with weapons, technology, or warships. No, they were coming with something far more dangerous. They were coming with their chaos. The next Galactic Council meeting was only a few weeks away. The thought made Zix-9 want to flee to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, where he could hide from the inevitable storm that was about to descend upon them all. If humans were coming, and they were truly on their best behavior, what would they really do when they got bored? As he slumped back into his chair, feeling the weight of galactic history pressing down on him, Zix-9 muttered to himself, "May the cosmos have mercy on us all." But deep down, he knew that the storm of human chaos was already on the horizon, and nothing could stop it. 3 Galactic Standard weeks later, Professor Zix-9 found himself nervously pacing the grand atrium of the Galactic Council headquarters. The place buzzed with activity as representatives from 1,000 worlds mingled, all exchanging data packets, pheromones, and clicks. The usual mix of diplomatic hustle and bustle. But today, Zix-9's tentacles twitched in anticipation. The humans were coming. He glanced up at the massive observation windows, which provided a panoramic view of the cosmos. The deep, eternal black of space seemed oddly comforting, like a void that could swallow the terror creeping into his many hearts. The humans had never been one to play by the rules, but now Now they were entering the heart of galactic diplomacy. Kiki, his assistant, who had somehow wriggled her way into accompanying him on this wild ride, hovered nearby. Her feathers fluttered nervously. "Can you believe it, Professor?" she chirped, wide-eyed. "Humans are here, in the council chamber, for real." Zix-9 let out a deep sigh, his eye stalks drooping with exhaustion. "I've seen things, Kiki, horrible things, but nothing could prepare me for this." He waved a tentacle towards the growing crowd, who seemed completely unfazed by the human delegation's arrival. And then they entered. The door slid open with a hiss, and in strode the human delegation, led by none other than Captain Rodriguez. The moment he entered, the entire room went silent. Silence in a place filled with so many species was an anomaly. The silence, however, was not one of awe, but of confusion, concern, and disbelief. Rodriguez stood there, arms crossed, grinning like a man who knew exactly what kind of chaos he was about to unleash. He wore a jacket that might have been borrowed from a space cowboy movie, and he looked completely at home. His sunglasses, yes, sunglasses, added an extra layer of absurdity. His human entourage, a group of thoroughly unimpressed-looking scientists and diplomats, followed behind him, all wearing the same disarming expression of utter nonchalance. "Sup, nerds!" Rodriguez called out loudly, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. Zix-9's eye stalks swiveled, each trying to hide the waves of nausea that washed over him. This was it. The humans were here, and their brand of diplomacy was about to begin. "Captain Rodriguez," came a voice from the front, a diplomat from the arachnoid species, all mandibles and compound eyes, stepping forward cautiously. "We welcome you to our Galactic Council. We are honored by your presence." Rodriguez gave a wide, toothy grin. "Aw, thanks, man. Love what you've done with the place. Very spacey." His voice had the tone of someone commenting on the decor of a fast food restaurant. The arachnoid diplomat's eyes blinked in confusion, unsure how to respond. Zix-9 moved toward Rodriguez, his tentacles uncomfortably tense. He felt like he was walking straight into a minefield. "Rodriguez," he whispered, his voice trembling. This is the Galactic Council. You can't—" "Oh, don't worry, Prof," Rodriguez interrupted, slapping Zix-9 on the back. "We've got this covered. Just here to show these folks what humanity's really about." He gave the professor a wink that sent a wave of dread coursing through his tentacles. "No big deal." Before Zix-9 could protest, Rodriguez had already sauntered to the center of the room, his voice booming again. "Esteemed delegates of the galaxy," Rodriguez said, adopting a surprisingly formal tone. "We come before you today with a proposal that will change the face of galactic diplomacy forever, human style." The room fell into an uneasy silence. Zix-9 felt his multiple hearts race. What was he doing now? Rodriguez paused, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air for dramatic effect. The tension was palpable, and then he broke it, with a smile that could probably be seen from orbit. "We want to join your Space Olympics," Rodriguez declared. There was a long, stunned pause, and then chaos. "What?" bellowed a massive Jovian diplomat. "That's preposterous. You barely know how to leave your own solar system." "Impossible," shrieked a collective of psychic jellyfish. "You have no place in our competitive sphere." An energy being flickered in confusion. "Space Olympics?" Rodriguez, undeterred by the confusion swirling around him, continued. "I know what you're all thinking. Humans? In the Olympics? That's cute. But hear me out." He pressed a button on his wrist device, and a hologram materialized in the center of the room. Zix-9 watched, horrified, as a human astronaut appeared on the screen, standing atop what looked like a black hole. "We call it cosmic surfing," Rodriguez said proudly. "First one to ride the event horizon without getting spaghettified wins." There was a collective intake of breath, and a few delegates seemed to faint. Zix-9's eye stalks twisted in horror. A loud clacking sound came from the arachnoid diplomat's mandibles. That's impossible and illegal. Awesome, right? Rodriguez grinned. But we're not stopping there. He raised his hands dramatically. Next up, the neutron star javelin throw. Zix-9 could hardly process the madness unfolding before him. He felt as though the entire galaxy was collapsing in on itself. And then, just when it seemed the galaxy might actually implode, Rodriguez's voice boomed again, a playful edge creeping into it. You all want us to be dangerous? Fine. But we're going to do it our way. We're not going to destroy you. We're going to outfun you. And if you think that's crazy, he continued, his grin widening, wait till you see our plans for the next round of galactic diplomacy. Zix-9 slumped into a seat, feeling as though every ounce of energy had been drained from him. He wasn't sure if he was witnessing the end of galactic order, or a new era in chaos-driven diplomacy. And yet, amid the wild laughter and frenetic planning, he couldn't help but wonder, maybe, just maybe, humans had figured something out after all. Professor, Kiki asked, sidling up beside him, do you think the galaxy is ready for this? Zix-9's tentacles twitched with a mix of dread and reluctant admiration. I don't think anyone is ready, he muttered, but it's going to be one hell of a show. And as Rodriguez continued to charm his way through the galaxy's most powerful beings, each more confused than the last, Zix-9 couldn't shake the feeling that, just maybe, the chaos the humans brought might just be the very thing that held the galaxy together. Or at least entertained it for a few centuries. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with frenzied energy. The towering columns of marble-like rock shimmering under the blue ambient lights seemed to vibrate with the chaos of the moment. Zix-9's eye stalks twitched uncontrollably as he glanced around at the delegates who, just hours ago, had been engaged in somber debates over the fate of the galaxy. Now they were caught in the throes of a truly unprecedented event, the first-ever intergalactic barbecue cook-off. The scene before him was surreal. Various species, some with eyes, some without, others made entirely of light, were milling about the space, each group preparing dishes from their respective worlds. There was even a collective of sentient rocks eagerly setting up a geothermal grill, while a group of energetic beings from the Crab Nebula tried, and failed, to make a salad without spontaneously turning it into plasma. But it was the humans who were at the center of it all. Captain Rodriguez had gathered a team of his finest chefs, food scientists, and a few curious diplomats who were far more interested in perfecting their grilling techniques than talking politics. The human delegation had transformed a section of the council chamber into a sprawling kitchen space. The scent of sizzling meat, of every variety, from slab steaks to a strange purple fruit only found on one obscure moon, wafted through the air, mixing with the fragrances of alien spices and aromas that Zix-9 had never before encountered. "Hey, Prof!" came the unmistakable voice of Rodriguez, the human captain himself, strolling over with a plate in hand. He was holding up something that resembled a rack of ribs, only it was glowing faintly. "You gotta try this. Ribeye steaks marinated in gamma radiation. It's a delicacy back home." Zix-9 stared at the glowing meat, his eye stalks twitching in a mixture of fascination and horror. "Rodriguez, what is that? That can't be safe." Rodriguez just laughed, slapping Zix-9's tentacle in what was probably meant as a friendly gesture. "Relax, Professor. It's perfectly safe. We have a whole bunch of chefs who are really good at making radioactive food delicious." Zix-9 looked over at Kiki, who was busily surveying the preparations. She looked almost happy. Her feathers had settled into their usual calm demeanor. The chaos of the event seemed to have lulled her into a strange sense of contentment. "Look at them, Professor," Kiki said, eyes wide as she watched several alien species, once too proud to even acknowledge each other, now gathering around grills, swapping recipes, and exchanging tips. I never thought I'd see the day when the entire galaxy was cooking together. Zix-9 couldn't argue. As absurd as it was, it felt almost unifying. The diplomatic tensions that had plagued the galaxy for millennia had melted away like butter on a hot pan. And in their place, something unexpected was happening. Something that humans, in all their chaotic brilliance, had orchestrated. As the event continued, Zix-9 watched with a growing sense of disbelief as different species joined in the competition, each trying to outdo the others with their own culinary flair. The gaseous beings from the nebula Fomalhaut presented a dish they called stellar soufflé, made with particles from collapsing stars. The reptilian Krelthians served up a dish of solar flare-seared fish, and the silicon-based life forms tried and failed to bake cookies with the heat from their own magma bodies. But the real shocker came when Rodriguez stepped up to the center of the chamber, holding a massive platter. He beamed at the audience, his grin wide enough to span several sectors of space. "Ladies and gents," Rodriguez announced, "it's time for the grand finale. We present to you our signature dish, the Cosmic Burger." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Zix-9 couldn't help but stare as Rodriguez lifted the burger, a massive glowing concoction that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The ingredients floated in mid-air, held together by some unexplainable force. "How do you even—" Zix-9 began, but Rodriguez cut him off with a laugh. "Science, Professor. We use quantum entanglement to keep the ingredients together while it cooks in the warp field. It's a little unstable, but hey, we've been working on it." The Cosmic Burger hovered before them, glowing brightly, and with a flash, it was plated and served. Zix-9 was ready to protest. He was sure there was some galactic regulation against this kind of thing. But he found himself speechless. As various ambassadors, once so serious and imposing, leaned in for a taste, the atmosphere in the room began to shift once again. The chaos had turned into something else, something that felt like unity. Kiki chirped in excitement, her feathers flaring up in delight. "They're eating it! They're enjoying it!" Indeed, the members of the Galactic Council, some of whom had spent centuries plotting to outmaneuver one another, were now swapping plates, comparing grilling techniques, and sharing stories about the strangest foods they had ever eaten. Even the usually stoic Spilopodians were muttering in approval, a few of their tentacles twitching in what might have been interpreted as a smile. Zix-9 could hardly believe it. He had spent his life preparing for political maneuvering, for delicate alliances and fierce rivalries, but never once had he thought that a galaxy so divided could come together over something as simple as food. And yet, as he watched Captain Rodriguez negotiate the details of an intergalactic potluck, he realized the truth. It wasn't that humanity was somehow better suited for peace or diplomacy. It was simply that they didn't take themselves too seriously. They didn't care about the old grudges and rivalries that had kept the galaxy in a state of constant tension. They cared about stories. They cared about sharing. And for the first time, they were showing the galaxy how to truly connect. "Professor," Kiki said softly, her voice filled with awe, "maybe humanity really does know something we don't." Zix-9 leaned back in his chair, his multiple hearts still racing with disbelief. "Maybe," he said, his voice quiet. "Maybe we've been doing it wrong all along." The sound of laughter and the clinking of plates filled the air as the Galactic Council continued to embrace this strange new form of diplomacy. Zix-9 watched Captain Rodriguez high-five a rock-based life form who had just presented an unconventional method of grilling via magma flow. The professor couldn't help but smile. The chaos humans had brought to the galaxy wasn't destruction. It wasn't anarchy. It was something more profound, something that transcended politics, technology, and even time. It was the simple, chaotic joy of being, of celebrating life together in the most unexpected way. The age of humanity had begun, and as the Galactic Council embraced its newest, most chaotic members, one thing was clear. The universe was about to be changed, but perhaps not in the way anyone had expected. And as Zix-9 watched the cosmic burger disappear into the mouths of ambassadors, he found himself grinning, a small, nervous smile of realization. Maybe, just maybe, humanity had been the answer to the galaxy's problems all along. And as Rodriguez winked at him across the room, Zix-9 couldn't help but think, the universe may never be the same, but it's going to be a hell of a ride.